Wow. I am elated to be standing in front of the group of educators in the state of Texas that I value more than any. And we are involved with every organization in the state of Texas, and we love everybody in all of those. But there's something about ASET that is very special, and you have no idea the honor that it is to me to stand here and be asked to share my testimony, because it's hopefully today, and I'll get into that in a minute, but it's people like you, the reason I'm standing here today, and hopefully I'll be able to share a couple things that will lead you to believe that. Wally was a little bit kind when he mentioned about how long we had been here in our hair. Actually, we were here so long, Ken Schrader had black hair. And Wally and I both had hair, but we didn't have much then. We lost it a long time ago. But to be here today, I just can't tell you how much it meant to me when I got the phone call would I come share and be the keynote speaker and share my testimony of what education has done to my life, and do it in front of the people I value so much in my life. When I hung up the phone, I looked at Rhonda and I said, boy, ASET's broke. They can't afford a speaker, and they called me. But I will tell you, a few years ago, I got a call from a superintendent, and he called me, and they'd gone through a real struggle in their districts, and in that struggle, morale was down, and he called me, and he said, Larry, I need you. And I said, what can I do? And I can break the microphone. I said, what can I do? And he says, I need you to motivate my teachers. Our morale is down. The teachers, we just need somebody. I need you to share with them, and I need somebody that can motivate my teachers and motivate my principals and motivate everybody. And I said, well, Dr. So-and-so, are your teachers coming to campus every day? Yes. Are your principals coming to campus every day? Yes. Are you coming? Is your staff coming? Everybody's coming? They're still coming no matter all this adversity going on? Are they showing up? And he said, yes, they are. And I said, well, you don't need anybody to motivate educators. Educators, you people are you're the most motivated people in the whole wide world. They're motivated, they just don't know why. I said, they don't know why they're doing it, so maybe I can come and help them understand a little bit of why they're motivated, because I'm going to tell you something. You people, you're not making a difference in the world. You are the difference. And I hope before we do today, you will believe that, and a few things that I share will help you, because all of you could stand here and share stories and probably do a much better job than me. And I'm just going to share with you a few things today of when things question the motivation, because I know there's times that you get up and you wonder why you're doing what you do. And that's what I always say, why do you do what you do? You're motivated. You people, there's nobody in the whole wide world more motivated than you. And please always understand that all I'm doing today is trying to help you trigger something that tells you why you're motivated. And I like to go back a few years in my life. 1974, I know some of you weren't born, you don't have to say that. 1974, across the United States, if you'll recall, tornadoes just tore through in the spring, and it just tore up the Midwest United States. And I was with the Sheriff's Department at that time in Xenia, Ohio, and April 3rd, 1974, a tornado ripped through that town from the southwest corner to the northeast corner. 33 people dead. That was the most devastating thing I had ever seen. It was like a bomb had dropped, and I won't tell you all the things, and I won't go into all that today, but some of the things that there I was doing what I thought I was called to do at the time. This was me, and that's what you are, folks. You're called to do what you do. You're not in a career. I don't care what your beliefs are, but you're called to do what you do. And I felt that calling to do that, to help my community, to serve and protect. That's what from my heart I was doing. All of a sudden, our world changed. All of a sudden, we didn't know what to do, and the first thing that all of a sudden I realized, I was on my knees digging through this rubble, and I won't go into total detail, but I will tell you, I'll never forget how I felt when I picked that little baby up in my arms that didn't move. And he didn't move, and his daddy crawls out from the rubble here reaching for his son, and I handed him over and all of a sudden, I was in this dream of doing one thing. That was just one incident that I'll never forget, handing that little boy who was dead to his dad. And I was it was like, here comes all the police officers from around the world, and the soldiers were everywhere, and we were just it was like nothing ever happened to me. And I didn't have time to wonder what I was doing. I didn't think about why I did what I did. For the first 24 hours, we didn't really know who we are, what we do. We just did what we did. I can't even remember some of the things we did. It was just unreal, the first 24 hours. And then later, we, kind of come to our senses a little bit. About 48 hours of non-stop rescue, all of these things that we did, and all the help that came from all around the world. It's one of the worst tornadoes ever in the history of the U.S. And all of a sudden I came to my senses and I started seeing soldiers everywhere, and we had plows coming through and trying to do the roads through and clear some way for people to still get through, and kind of came to my senses, and I thought, wow, this is what I do. I'm just one of many, 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 but boy, I'm motivated to do this. So they gave me a job to do, and one of my jobs to do was to go out here and in this clearing area, and we had insurance companies. I didn't know there was that many insurance companies in the world. I do now later in life because we get their mail every day. But my job was to help the insurance companies organize them in here. They were pulling their trailers in, and they were setting up, and it was pretty impressive. They were taking care of their people. They were lining up. They were setting themselves up for their people, and the big signs, whether it's State Farm or whatever it was. They were everywhere. And that was my responsibility, to get them organized and help the agents come in there, and the big bosses were coming in. And I went back into after it was about the third day, I think, and I went back into the control center, and the sheriff was there, and he looked down the hall and he hollers, "Hutto, come here." "Yes, sir, Sheriff." I go up there, and he was standing next to this real tall, very well-dressed gentleman in a suit, and kind of looked out of place at the time. And he says, "Deputy Hutto, I want to introduce you to Agent so-and-so." And I said, "Okay." I'd met lots of agents, And I thought, well, he wants me to take him. And he says he answers directly to the president. And I said, well, that's good. I said, "What company?" He says, "The United States." And I said, "This United States?" He goes, "Yes." He said, This is the lead agent, Secret Service agent for President Nixon, and he wants to come here, and you're going to take Agent so-and-so out, and you're going to take 2 days, and you're going to work, and he's going to find a motorcade route that would be safe for the motorcade. Well, I'm like, I didn't care if the president was coming. I didn't care if I liked him or not. He wasn't real liked about that time by a lot of people, but it didn't matter. I was going, and so we did motorcade, and I didn't know there were so many places that somebody could get shot. I started worrying a little bit. I'm like, wow. But I got really excited. I thought, boy, this is what I do. All of a sudden, I'm working with the lead agent of the President of the United States. Me. I'm just a little old deputy up here. I was a kid. I was in my early 20s. I'm not that old. And I was all excited about that because this is what I do. This is what I do. And I was all excited about that. And so the president comes in on a helicopter, and we had it all mapped out. And my responsibility, my car was the lead car. And my job was I had to protect the presidential limousine. And I was told face to face, "Deputy, you will stand when we park. You get out of your car. I'll get out of here. I'll let the president out. When the president comes out, you be standing by your rear of your car in the front fender of the presidential limo." I got it. I can do that. I was ready. So we made a couple of stops, and I was standing there, Nobody said anything. I thought, I got this under control. We made the last stop. Lots of people. And I kind of forgot that there was a few people that didn't particularly like President Nixon at that time. I thought everybody was there because we had a bad tornado. We stopped. They get him out, and this crowd is next to the barricade. And all of a sudden, I'm listening to this chant, "Impeach Nixon, impeach Nixon, impeach." It got louder. Somebody started, "I hate Nixon," and I'm like, wait a minute. I began to realize that this crowd was getting big, and the only thing between that crowd was that little barricade that was moving. The only thing between that barricade and the guy they didn't like was me. And I really thought, what am I going to do? I'm standing here by myself, and I've been told under no circumstance with anybody, you stop with any force necessary, anybody that tries to touch that limo or comes between your car and that presidential limousine. For a really quick second, I started questioning my motivation. I want to protect my community, but I might not want to I may not be interested in protecting that guy that they don't like. So I questioned myself. Well, they didn't get to him, and everything was fine, and we got through that. And afterwards, I began to assess myself. What do I do? You know, I did something today that should be an honor to do, and I really questioned my motivation. Is this really what, I'm motivated to do this. Now I understand, I look back at all I'd done for the last 3 or 4 days, and it made me, I looked at my colleagues and the fellow officers and all the rescue, all the people, and I said, this is what we do, and this is why I'm motivated to do what I do. And that was a moving time in my life. But let me go back a little bit further with you to when I was in the 7th grade, and some of you can be quiet. I know I'm getting looked at like you do not remember the 7th grade. I do, but it's a blur. I would like to share a very, very, very important story with you in my life in the 7th grade. All of you could stand here and tell us about somebody in your lifetime, a teacher, a student, there's somebody that you're never going to forget in your life. It made an impact on you that you'll never forget, and it happened to me in the 7th grade. We're about 3 weeks, I think, into school in our community, and we're in our class, and a kid walks in, new kid nobody had seen, and the teacher gets up and she said, "Class," she said, "We have a new student today, and I would like to introduce him to you. He just moved here, and would you please make him welcome?" The typical that everybody in this room has done at some time or another, right? He comes in, and by the way, his name was Doug. She introduced Doug, and Doug came in, and it didn't take long to find out that in our community, Doug came from the other side of the tracks. That's what it was called. He lived on the other side of the tracks. So he didn't make friends real good. Thank you very much. He was trying to make some friends, and he was shy. But the one thing Doug had that he was so proud of was his brand new white tennis shoes. So he made conversation with, he would talk about, "I got new tennis shoes." And you notice a couple more things as the weeks went on. That was his main conversation, and Doug had these real wide feet, and these tennis shoes were obviously cheap and too tight, and they started tearing on the outside. And Doug became, 7th graders can be pretty tough. And we were no exception. And so Doug, in his wanting to reach out and just kind of backed in the hole, everybody started kind of making fun of him. And when he would come in the room, they'd go, "Oh, we think Doug just had a blowout on his tennis shoes." Doug having a blowout on his tennis shoes. He would walk down the hallway, and somebody would walk behind him when he walked down the hallway. They'd down the hallway and go, "Doug had a blowout." And his tennis shoes got more and more and more. So it got through the winter, and this kid's shoes were torn on both sides, and his feet were wet sometimes when he'd come to school. And the class, 7th graders, he was from the other side of the tracks. There was nothing special about him. And it didn't take long to understand he had 2 pairs of blue jeans and three shirts, a blue, a green, and a red, and the same plaid. And he recognized his jeans, only 2 pair, because in those days, unlike what Julie does, she wears pants, and my wife wears pants with holes in them. Well, it wasn't cool back then. And his mother would patch them. Anybody ever had those? Raise your hand if you ever had patches on your blue jeans. He had patches, and they're new patches, so it is obviously we could count the patches. So spring comes along, and And Doug got so much wanting to be a part of his class, he would walk by and he would go, "Oh, I just had a blowout." He began to make fun of himself. The only way he could fit in was to make fun of himself. And spring came and athletics in that town was a big thing. And so they had this huge, the whole town showed up for this track and field event. And the coaches were there, and the whole event was meant for, the main reason it was there was to see the upcoming athletes, possibilities in the 7th graders and 8th graders, particularly, and obviously the high schoolers, but they were looking at the new kids, the young kids. And Doug signed up. You could sign up, do whatever you want. Well, we noticed Doug signed up for the 100-yard dash. Now, it was 100 yards back then. We thought a meter was what you put a nickel in at the parking lot. We didn't know what meters were. And Doug signed up for the 100-yard dash and the 100-yard shuttle, 2 people at each end. Well, nobody knew Doug, did much about him, and the time to call for the 100-yard dash for 7th grade boys, and we got out there, and the boys was going to run, got out there, and Doug walks up to that track, and he reaches down, and he takes those old ragged tennis shoes and throws them to the side, and he's barefooted, and heard one of the coaches go, "Son, you can't run barefooted on this cinder track." And he said, "Yes, sir, I can. It's okay." Okay. Boom, they sound the gun and they take off. Well, like a lightning rod. All of a sudden, nobody knew Doug. They knew anything about it. They'd never seen it. Boom, he's gone. He crossed the finish line way in front of everybody else. And his time was the best of everybody that ran. Well, everybody kind of went, "Well, Doug, wow, we didn't know you could do that." And all of a sudden, yeah, you can run. That's pretty good. We didn't know that about you. We thought you were just a kid from the other side of the track with old ragged tennis shoes. And later they did the relay. Doug, the coaches, I guess, put him at the anchor. Y'all I'm sure know what that means, the last runner. When he got the baton, their team was in last place. And at the very second at the end, Doug passed everybody and blew everybody's mind. And everybody's like, "Holy mackerel." The coaches were like, "Who's this kid? Who's this 7th grader?" The coaches got him over to the side. Everybody, even the girls, liked him now. And it was a big time. So we finished the day. Doug left those tennis shoes and walked around barefooted over behind the grandstand. The next day was a huge they had a big auditorium there, and the parents came, and they're going to get all the awards for the track and feel everybody get their. And you've all been there, you've all done these things, and sit through kid after kid and go to sleep, and do it. But that's what we were doing. Well, our class was in the very back of this auditorium. We were right here, like the back, and everybody else just down there. And we looked around, and all of a sudden, Doug had been sitting on the end, and he had walked back behind some parents. We didn't really know why, because it was getting close to the time to give out the 7th grade awards. And he was standing behind these parents and kind of looked and had big tears running down his face. And we were like, what's the deal with him? Nobody knew. 7th graders really cared. And what is it? Our teacher eased up, and a few of us noticed her walking behind those parents, and the parents were really paying attention to Doug. He was just hiding behind them, crying. Teacher walks in behind him. You could see she had her arm around him. I know we're not supposed to do that anymore, but you know what? If I come into school, I'm going to hug you kids, so get ready. She was whispering in his ear. All of a sudden, the strangest thing happened to this kid. Doug goes, he starts wiping his face. He stands up like that. And about that time, they were calling for the 7th grade kid, and they called his name. And Doug walked down the aisle, standing like this. He walks down. This is what he did, I promise. And we're like, what is going on with this kid? He goes up and he receives the most promising 7th grade athlete award. That's great, but what is he doing? And this is Doug. And that's how he come down. That's how he finished. That's how he finished the 7th grade. He started, all of a sudden, he became part of everybody. He started talking. He made friends. Nothing mattered. He started talking good things, and everybody responded to what he had achieved. And he started talking about what he had done, and he felt good about what he did. And he became a part of everybody because he had run. But what was this deal about? He was crying and then he's smiling. Well, nobody ever knew, obviously. You know how you educators are. You do things that nobody ever knows what you did. And that's one of the reasons I'm here today, because you do things that nobody ever knows about. And nobody knew what that teacher said to Doug. Nobody except Doug. I want to share with you today what that little teacher said to Doug. Because my middle name is Douglas. And I was called Doug. I was Doug. I do this a lot and every time, so forgive me for a second. And I remember the fear, the pain. I was gripped. I just wanted to run. I knew I'd get in trouble if I ran away. And I just knew I'm going to walk on that stage. I have these old tennis shoes on. And I'm going to walk across that stage, and they're going to start going, blow out. And I couldn't listen to it again. I couldn't hear it again. And Mrs. Shoemaker, isn't that something? That was her name. True story. Mrs. Shoemaker whispered in my ear. She said, you listen to me. And I respected her. She had been sweet to me the whole year. She said, I want you to listen to me. She whispered in my ear. Nobody was paying attention. We were behind this big old guy, daddy standing there. And she goes, you are the champion. You are number one. You are the best. Do you understand? You're the best. You're number one. She never said anything about my shoes. You know what she said? She said, I want you to stand tall. And I want you to put a smile on so big. You're the champion. Put a champion smile on. And guess what? That's all anybody will see. All anybody's going to see is that big old smile of the champion. And that's all they will see. She focused on the positive. And I believed her. And there's no telling what I looked like. I didn't care. I believed in me. She believed, Mrs. Shoemaker believed in me. And I got that award I was so proud of. And later, things kind of settled down. School became, and I got another pair of shoes, by the way. And those lasted a little longer. And so life went on for me, and I wanted to be an athlete. That's what I wanted to do, and I was a pretty good kid in school. Some of my teachers would argue with that, but went on and I was in high school and I got injured early, and realized that my chances of a college education, because we lived in we called it the poor part of town. They call it lower socioeconomic part of East Dallas now. We had moved there, and I just thought everybody's poor. I didn't know any better. But I knew my chances of going to college was going to have to be a scholarship. So that was going away. Things were happening, and I don't have time to go into detail today, because all of you, I'm getting ready to tell you something that everybody in this room has dealt with in your campuses and in your districts, something that you've dealt with. All of a sudden, I'm 17 years old. I have 6 months of school left in my senior year. She's a junior. We're pregnant. I'm going to be a daddy. I am now a married 17-year-old because I had a responsibility, and I was taught responsibility. So now I'm married, 6 months left in school. I don't have any money. I don't have any skills. I can't do anything. What do? I load trucks from 4 to 12, 12 to 8. School became a non-issue for me. I couldn't go to school. I had to sleep sometime. And my mother would say, hey, they're calling from the school. and they want to talk to you. They want you to please come back. Maybe there's a way. I'm like, how can I do that? I got to sleep. I have to I don't have any money. I'm loading trucks for this company from 4 to 12 and from this company from 12 to 8, and I come and go to sleep. And those companies were real close. Freight companies were just a few blocks apart. And I worked, and every penny I got was going to the doctors because there were some complications. Didn't know what was going on. I'm 17. She's 16. Anybody dealt with those lately? Raise your hand if you've dealt with it here recently in your schools. Huh? You know what I'm talking about? Not bad kids. Had good parents, great parents, loving parents, but they just didn't have any money. And I made a decision that I had to live with, so I had a responsibility. So about 3-4 months went by, and my mother would say, Miss Lockhart called. She was my counselor, Miss Elizabeth Lockhart, called, said, she wants you to please come to school. There's maybe something they can do for you. Now, back then, there were no fuel ed programs like we have that you know was A+. And it's still not about that. It's still about you. It was just the educator. That's all it was. So one morning, I got in from work. I was so tired. I'll never forget. And I just fell into bed. Didn't even take my clothes off. Just fell into bed to sleep. A little bit later, just knock on the door, and I'm like, then there's a pounding at the door. There's a knock, 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 knock at the door, and I'm like, what is this? I finally go to the door. Open the door, and guess who's standing in the door? Miss Elizabeth Lockhart. Little white-haired lady, about that tall, and I was scared to death of her. And she walks in. She just pushed me back. Hutto, come on, get dressed. And I was already dressed. She says, you're going with me to school. I said, Miss Lockhart, I cannot do this. Miss Hart, please. I'll finish school. I promise you, this baby gets here, everything, and then I promise you, I'll figure out a way to get a GED. I'll finish high school. I promise you I will, but I can't do it now. She said, yes, you can. And yes, you will. She says, come on, we've worked something out. We've got something, you can do this. I get it. So she comes to me. She walks up to me and she pokes me in the chest, and she did it hard too. She didn't care. She poked me. You could do that back then too. She hit me in the chest and she goes, let me tell you something. And all the athletes I was still considered one of the athletes, even though I didn't participate much anymore. But she poked me in the chest and she said, you're special. You've got something inside of you. You've got something inside of you like I've never seen before. And you know what? I'm going to see that you use it. But you know what? She hit me on the head and she said, but you don't have anything in here. She said, that's just my job. And I refuse to let you out. And my job is just one little stage, one little step of what you got to put right here. I refuse to let you not put it here. You can do this. Get in your car and follow me to school now. I got in the car. And I was a zombie. And I went in there and she said, we're going to go in the assistant principal's office. I go in and I'm like, okay. I loved Mr. Reed, but wow, was he a disciplinary? He was a typical AP, y'all. I mean, he was the kind that, whew. And he liked us. He was tough on the athletes, so man, you couldn't breathe. If they heard of an athlete doing something back then, I mean, they'd kill you or think you wish you were dead. And I'm like, oh, gosh. I said, Miss Lockhart, do I have to talk to Mr. Reed? Yes. And I was waiting for this sermon. I was waiting for this speech to tell me about this bad mistake I had made and blah, 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 blah. I knew that's what was going to happen. I sat down in Mr. Reed's office. Miss Lockhart sat there. And I'm going to say 30 plus minutes later, I was convinced I could walk on water. I was convinced I could fly. By the time Mr. Reed, the first words out of his mouth as he reached over and he took my hand and he said, I am so proud of you. He said, you've had to become a man very early. You're still just a boy. But you know what? You've taken the role of a man. And do you know how proud I am of you, son? Do you know how proud we all are of you? And you know what? We've worked something out. And what he had done, and I didn't know, he had called both of my employers, negotiated a deal me to cut my hours, to raise my pay, give me double shifts on the weekend. And he said, this won't be easy. But you know what? I believe in you. You can do this. You can do this. We're here. Miss Lockhart's going to take you to all your teachers, and everybody has a plan for you. We're going to, and who knows what kind of shortcuts they cut in those days. I don't know. I don't remember. I just remember that Miss Lockhart, when we walked out, I thought, I can do this. Mr. Reed, if Mr. Reed believes in me, Miss Lockhart believes in me. By the time we went to all the teachers, I walked out of that school. I said, I'll see you tomorrow. I went to my employers, and they said, son, you got one heck of a principal from your school. And they told me then, they had already told me, says, you're going to get extra pay, and you're going to get this. And you know what? We're even going to give you an easier job because you're working so hard. Because somebody called. Because somebody cared about me and convinced me. And it was people like y'all. And to have the honor late in life, well, not that late, to work with you, the same people. Yeah, you're not the same actual people that rescued me, but that's what you do. You know why I love ASET? You rescue people. You're the reason that a lot of people out here, and the thing that you got to remember, folks, don't pay attention to the newspaper. Don't pay attention to the politicians and what you see on the news. We're not broke. Education isn't broken. You're not broken. We're getting kids to our school that know things before we know them. You're dealing with kids who have access to the world, and you are expected to bring them in here, and everybody, all the politicians and all the people in the world, well, we're going to give you all these tests, and we're going to see exactly what you're doing. They have no clue what you're doing. But you know what? You have a clue what you're doing. I'd like to ask in closing, is there somebody in here, has anybody been an educator less than 10 years? You've been less than 10 years. Anybody? You? How many years, darling? How long you been an educator? Oh, I need you. Come here. Oh, wow. Can y'all see me? I know I'm real tall. Okay, real quick, and we're going to close this thing. And what's your name? Jolie. Jolie, you're from?
Aldine.
Aldine. Guess what? Jamie, where's Jamie? Tell her where I went to elementary school in Houston, Texas. First grade through sixth grade.
Orange Grove, and they still have the paddle with his name on it.
I was there first grade through, and that was before I went to that. Come over here. My wife's just sitting there. She doesn't mind if I hold your hand. She's a very secure lady. Now, give me somebody. Is there anybody been in education in here more than 50 years? Is there somebody in there? More than 40. 50? Is somebody 50? Did I hear that? Come here. Come on. Thank you. Stay here. Don't go there. Wow. 1 year. Run. Come on. Yes. Give her a hand. Woo-hoo. This is awesome. 46. Wow. 1 year. Now, and 46?
46.
Wow. Let me ask you a question. Can y'all see us? Hear us okay? I want you to listen to her. It's not about me, it's about her. None of this is about me, it's about y'all. Did you ever look out in the classroom and look at 20-something kids?
30.
30. See? 40. That's even better. Did you ever look at them and look at those heads and think of the dreams that were in there? And they were everyone different. Wonder how many dreams walked through your classroom.
Oh, my goodness.
You ever think about that? Y'all ever think about in 46 years how many dreams? And in 46 years, there's people out there that she made an impact on and she doesn't even know it. Because, see, in my story, Mrs. Shoemaker, Mrs. Lockhart, Mr. Reed, by the way, Mr. Reed, anybody here from Keller? Where? There you are. Well, there you are. Dr. Randy Reed is one of my closest friends. Mr. Reed was his daddy. So you can imagine that Randy Reed and I are very close. Now, Randy was here. He would say he wasn't born yet, but he was. He was a little snide-nosed kid running around in our gym. That's what. But Randy and I have developed a very, very special bond because his daddy. And when I went to, and we were friends, and when he realized who we were, we realized what it was. I said, Randy, I got a story to tell you. I told him the story. I said, I want to go hug your dad. I want to tell your dad. And he said he died last year. None of those people ever knew what they did for me. None of those teachers ever knew. You know how many, 46 years, you know how many people are out there doing things? They're probably not as crazy as me, but you understand that they're out there? You're not broken. Your education is not broken. If you don't believe it, get on an airplane and somebody's going to fly that plane, and they had a teacher.
That's right.
Well, hello? Think about that. I'm going to get to you in a minute, so don't. Because what we're going to do, one of the things that we do, I always end up with, do you like to sing? Do y'all sing? We're going to do a little trio here. No, we're going to end this with, be ready, warm up. No, we're not. I'm just kidding. Stay. We're not going to sing. Think about, you've got 1 year. And it's not going to get any easier for you. It's going to get harder. But think of the dreams. Look at what she has seen. And it's a calling, folks. This is a calling. You know how many people are out here because of her? Just her. Think about how many people came through her classrooms that she made an impact on. They may be, everybody always say doctors and lawyers, and I don't know why. None of us like doctors and lawyers. But they're doing something. They're succeeding at something. They're doing something because of her. Now think about how many are going to succeed and do things in this world, this space age, and the world as it is out there, and we hear all the bad things and stuff. You know what? You can't give up. You've got to take the torch. Are you with me? You got to take it. Your colleagues, your young colleagues, young lady stepping into education, huh? Does she deserve a hand? Huh? Because I'm sorry if I've gone a little over time, but listen, you and your colleagues, and there's a lot of people in here, you saw people coming into their career, and there's nothing to fix. We just have to keep working and do better at what we do. We want to do better. Anybody, am I right? We do want to do better, right? But those who say it's broken are full of. And my wife got nervous. She thought, oh my God. But all I can tell you in closing today, folks, is this. Never give up. I don't care the thing you got, and I'm preaching to the choir, but just all I'm trying to do today is walk out of this room, and maybe next week, tonight, tomorrow, when things are, you hear this stuff about education, you hear this, you can't give up because, as I said earlier, you don't make the difference, you are the difference. Can you imagine? Ken and I were talking to, what if we all just quit? We just quit. All across the whole state of Texas, everybody, I don't talk about going on political strikes, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about we just had it all, we're done. What would happen? You ever thought about that? What would happen? You can't quit. You can't quit. You understand? You have to draw your colleagues and those people who have callings, and you have to not give up. If you see a 16-year-old kid, no matter what that 16-year-old kid is today, they're not going to be the same at 30. And you're coming in a tough world, girl. You up for it? You rough and tough and hard to love?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
But in closing, again, I kept saying that again. Please, hopefully something I shared with you about the people who made a difference in my life. Think not only who made a difference in your life, I want you to think about whose life you've made a difference in, whose life you were the difference in. And the thing of it is, you're not going to know. You understand? You're succeeding and you're not getting credit for it. You'll never be paid what you're worth because society couldn't write the check. I'm serious. Society can't pay us, pay you, educators, what you do. They can't afford it. But it can't live without us. It cannot live without you. You are the difference. You are the difference. Say that with me. I am the difference. That's not loud enough. I am the difference. One more time. You believe that? Yes. You are the difference. Don't give up on your kids. Think about what you're doing and never, never give up. And thank you so much for letting me share my heart with you. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. I'm in trouble. Did I say a bad word? I think, can I say?
Appreciation from ACT. We appreciate you coming and speaking to us today.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you very
Robert.
much. You got a
Thank
great
you.
story.
We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go get it.